Rectification of error. This is our topic and very interesting issue we will be discussing in this module, and that is adjustment of working capital because of these rectifying accounting entries. We know very well that working capital includes current assets and current liabilities. We also name these current assets and current liabilities as working capital items. And the working capital is also known as net current asset. Okay? Because the working capital is the amount that we get after subtracting current liabilities from the current assets. So current assets minus current liability gives us an amount which is known as working capital. Since current assets are greater than the current liabilities, therefore the working capital would be having debit nature. Okay, so don't confuse with the name of capital, that capital is always credit in nature. That is something else. Here, this is in fact net current assets. So current assets are greater than the current liabilities. So working capital would always be having debit nature. Okay, so if we are having working capital with us, and in the rectifying entry, any working capital item means current asset or current liability is being debited. So this debit effect will cause an increase in the already worked out working capital. And if there is a credit effect in any rectifying entry relating to the working capital item, so this credit effect will cause a decrease in already worked out working capital amount. So we will do a scenario in which this issue will be discussed, that balance sheet of Almas shows a working capital figure of 100,000. All right. In the presence of following errors. In fact, how this working capital figure was worked out, that our current assets were 170 and our current liabilities were 70. That's why our working capital is 100,000. So it was worked out in the presence of following errors. And the error is that debit side of the debtor account had been overcast. Okay, debtor's account have been overcast with 1,000. And accrued rent means the rent payable of 2,000 had been credited to the rent income account. Instead of crediting the accrued rent payable account, we have credited rent income account. And then accumulated depreciation had been overcast by 5,000. All right. Debtors, these are current assets. Okay. Accrued rent payable, this is current liability. Okay. But this accumulated depreciation is neither current asset nor current liability. We will see how it will affect our working capital, or would it be affecting our current working capital or not. So we will see in the solution. Then credit purchases of 8,000 were completely omitted to record in the purchase journal. So when we will record this credit purchase of 8,000, so it will give us a current liability that is known as creditor. Well, now let's see what to do and how to work out this rectification of errors for adjusting this working capital figure of 100,000 with us. So this 100,000 is the amount that we took from our question, 100,000, yes. And this is debit in nature, we have already discussed. Debtors were overcast, and when we will rectify it, we will give credit to debtors, and credit means it will cause decrease in the working capital amount. Well, and rent income debit, it is nominal account, but this rent accrued is our working capital item. This working capital item is being credited. Yes, it will also be reducing our working capital. So accumulated depreciation, as we have already discussed, that this is not a working capital item, so it will not affect our working capital. By the way, in the rectifying entry, it will be having debit effect. Okay. And then purchases account is our nominal account, will be debited, but creditors account is our working capital item. When this will be credited, means it will cause decrease in our working capital. So all these three items are causing a decrease in the working capital of 100,000, which was in fact worked out before these rectification of errors. So after adjusting these three items in this 100,000, we will get 89,000 as adjusted working capital figure. Okay. So the important tips to remember in this module are that working capital is net current asset. Okay. It's debit in nature. And working capital is debit in nature. Okay. So these two tips you have to carry in the learning of this module. Thank you very much.